In all of the videos that I used for bandaging, I was able to use a stuffed animal with prior approval from the instructor, and I also did use a human in one of my videos with prior approval. Hey, it's Leslie Schmidt. This is Daisy, my patient. I washed my hands before I got her out. And we're going to do an ear hematoma bandage on her today. The supplies I'm using are I'm going to use porous tape, 1 inch and 2 inch. I've got roll gauze, that's 4 inch. I've got a Telfa pad just in case I need it, if we need it for a wet wound on the ear. And I have vet wrap, and I've got some gauze sponges to use under the ear. Hey, sweet girl. So we're going to start off by making stirrups for the ears. I'm going to need 4 pieces of the 1 inch porous tape. This is going to go on the outside of the ear, and this will fashion the ear up on the head. So we're going to go ahead and do it like this. Come to the outside of the ear. We did watch the instructional video and read our text about the application of the hematoma bandage. So we're just going to come to the outside margin of the ear. We're not going to cover up any of the pinna. We're just going to basically use the pinna as a foundation for the tape. So we're going to use another piece on there. We're making our stirrups, covering just the outer tips of the ears. She's being a good girl. That's a good girl. Very good girl. Okay. Alright, so we've got our stirrups ready. A lot of weird stuff going on here. Okay. At this point we're going to go ahead and use our gauze and position that up on top of the head, right where we're going to roll the ear over on. So we're just opening up the ear, putting it up on the head. And we're going to go ahead and fashion the tape down. It looks really weird, but it works. Okay, so you see this part? The ear is up and exposed and open. Here, being a good girl. Okay, so the next part is going to be the roll gauze. We're going to go ahead and start that. We'll be going under the ear first, and I'm going to avoid the other ear. I don't want to take the other ear, so it's uncovered. Alright, sweet girl. And when our next roll over, we're going to go in front of the other ear. Over here. And under again. Over. And we're also covering our hematoma ear. So it just actually has a swimmer's bonnet on. It's pretty cute. Okay. You can kind of pin this under one of these layers so it'll stay on its own. Okay. The next part we're going to do, we can go ahead and cut an ear hole. You got to be really careful just pick up only the bandage. Don't run into that ear. You got to be really careful to avoid that. So I did cut a little hole, and this is to actually, if we need to go in and medicate the ear, but it's also mainly just to protect the ear from getting cut whenever you go in and do things. Okay. So we can go ahead and apply another layer of the roll gauze. We'll do that just to give her some extra pad in there. So your other ear is still sticking out, still exposed. Daisy's very bored with this. It's okay. I'm just going to put one more layer. I'm still avoiding and covering up the ear. Being a good girl. So under and over that other exposed and open ear. Alright, sweet girl. Very good. And the next layer of the hematoma bandage is the vet wrap. So we're going to go ahead and vet wrap her using the big vet wrap. Okay. It's already been unrolled and loosened. We're just going to be gentle and make sure we don't wrap it too tight. Don't give it too much tension, because you can cause them to not be able to breathe if you wrap these too tightly around their neck. Easy says she's. Alright, sweet girl. Alright. Make sure you're not covering up their eyes or anything strange. Don't go down too far because we're going to have to put some tape on. Okay. So the vet wrap is to keep all of the under layers just on. Okay, sweet girl. Alright. Very important step here. We want to draw where our ear is on our bandage. We don't want anyone to come in and cut the ear. So we're going to draw a cute little picture that says ear on here. Go ahead and cut a little hole here and be very careful. And I can still see underneath where I'd cut my hole in the original bandaging. So if she needs to be medicated, she can go in and have medications put in her ear. Because a lot of times the hematomas are caused by deep ear infections. So we're going to go ahead and use our 2-inch tape now. So I'm going to secure the vet wrap on with just a wide piece here at each end. And you got to be careful also with this one not to apply your tape too thick or tight. So I'm going to go halfway onto our bandage and then halfway onto her fur. It is super cute on her. That sweet big girl. And this is just going to keep it from sliding too. Alright, sweet girl. So lift your head, make sure we get a good contact with the bandage in her fur. Alright, that concludes the application of the oral hematoma bandage. Just yet. Come here, Stacy. So we've got the other ear out. Make sure that we don't have it ill positioned. And we can see into our canal on the other ear on the unhealthy hematoma ear. And we do have it wrapped, so people will be careful when they come in to take the bandage off. So we're going to go ahead and remove our hematoma bandage now. Alright, Miss Stacy. Stay. Okay. With this one, the best thing to do is to actually remove it from the top. You're going to have to come as close as you can to the other ear. Miss Daisy, can you sit? Daisy, sit. Sit. Good, sit. Good girl. Oh, shake it off. This is what they do when they have this bandage. They like shaking it. Okay, so what I'm going to do to remove it is I'm going to really avoid where the ear is taped up onto the head. And in order to do that, I'm going to utilize the diagram that I have up here of the ear. And also I can use the other ear as a vantage point of where to go. So I'm actually going to start from the bottom, make sure I have all the bandage layers isolated in my hand, and use some bandage scissors to take that off. Alright, and being very careful. It is much easier to take these off on top of the head than on the bottom. So, do that. Very, very good girl. See, I can see my other ear. It's popped out now, the hematoma ear. I'm just going to follow the bandage up onto the head. And I'm going to unwrap this, and my stirrups are going to come off, so I have to be really careful pulling that off of her skin. And that is it. That's the removal of the bandage. Thank you. Hey, it's Leslie Schmidt. I'm going to be applying a simple abdominal bandage to my patient Nutmeg here today. I've got the supplies I need, which will be vet wrap for my outer layer, my tertiary layer. I've got a Telfa pad for my primary layer in case I have a wound, I don't want anything sticking to it. And then my secondary layer is going to be some cast padding. I did go ahead and watch the instructional video on how to apply the abdominal bandage. I have read through the McKiernan's text, and I also have a secondary book on bandaging written by Wiley and Blackwell. It's called Small Animal Bandaging, Casting, and Splinting Techniques. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to keep this bandage really simple. When we do an abdominal bandage, we're just going to wrap, obviously, the abdomen. Sometimes people will go up onto the chest, but we're just going to do abdomen. So I'm going to go and apply my first layer. We're going to pretend that she has a wound with this bandage. So you're going to apply the primary layer, which is the Telfa, to keep anything from sticking. Then we go ahead and start rolling my roll gauze around, cast padding rather, to go ahead and keep that in place. So I'm going to make a couple of layers. I'm going to keep it nice and light. You don't want it to be tight unless you're doing a compression wrap. And we're not doing that. We're just doing a simple abdominal bandage. So we've got our secondary layer on. Now we're going to go ahead and finish with rolled gauze. And this is self-adherent, so we won't be placing any tape on this, but you can secure abdominal bandaging with tape on either side of your vet wrap if you want to do that to fashion things down a little bit more securely. So we're going to go ahead and place the vet wrap on top there. And that is a simple abdominal bandage on this patient. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the abdominal bandage. To do that, you always want to be safe and cut where you can see. Don't put your scissors where you can't see. Because our patient has a wound down there, I don't want to go anywhere near a wound or anything I can't see with scissors. I'm just going to use some simple bandage scissors, and I'm going to cut along the top. I'm going to make sure I have all the layers isolated in my finger before I start to remove this bandage. So I'm going to gently cut, just checking the depth of where my scissors are, making sure I'm not hitting anything vital. Just very basically cutting off this. We're just going to make sure that everything looks okay under there and our wound is healing, and then that is a simple removal of the abdominal bandage. Okay, before we do the carpal flexion, I'm going to go over the materials that I need. This one's simple. I'm just going to do cast padding and vet wrap. Hey, it's Leslie Schmidt. I'm going to apply a carpal flexion splint on Sarah's arm. I did watch the video and I used my text to go ahead and learn how to do this sling. So we're going to start by bandaging her, we can let this relax a little bit, her hand, which would be the dog's foot, obviously, and we're going to leave her fingers, which are the dog's toes, exposed. We're going to wrap the foot and get a lot of padding on it first. Then we're going to actually start to sling around the bottom of the leg, right above the carpus. And this is to mobilize the carpus joint. So we use the cast padding first, and you would get that as closely and as tightly as you could next to the leg. And it's a little bit harder for people, I think, to flex that than animals. So we're going to do the cast padding first, and then we're going to finish with the vet wrap. And her toes / fingers are still exposed. And that's the application of our carpal flexion sling. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and remove the carpal flexion splint. I'm just going to cut here. Be really careful not to cut the leg. I'm just going through the material, the layers of the material. And we can go ahead and peel off the rest. Okay, and that's the removal of the carpal flexion sling. Excuse me. Hey, it's Leslie Schmidt. I'm here today to show you how to do a modified Robert Jones bandage on my dog Daisy. I washed my hands before I got her out, and I do have all of my materials ready. I've got porous tape for my strips. I have 2 pieces of that. Those are for my stirrups. I've got 2 tongue depressors to help with the stirrup. I've got rolled cotton or rolled gauze. I have cast padding, which I have 2 rolls of this. And I've got vet wrap. I have 2 rolls of vet wrap. And I'm also going to be applying a splint along with the bandage today. I don't unfortunately have any plastic splints. I'm going to be using a metal mason splint. So those are all the materials that I have present. So we're going to go ahead and have her assume the position. And I do have some bandage scissors too. Alright, Miss Daisy, we're going to have you lay down. Good girl, Daisy, good girl. Alright, so we're going to start by doing, we're going to apply a piece of tape onto the lateral aspect of the leg. And we're going to apply our tongue depressor on there. Use this lever to keep our tape from sticking. On the first one, so on the lateral aspect, this is not very sticky tape. Then our other piece will be on the medial aspect of the leg. Same thing. I'm going to put my tongue depressor on there too. Just right there, Miss Daisy. here. This is not the stickiest tape. All right. Try this again. Got the world's unstickiest horse tape. Thanks, you girl.
I need a backpack for 6 for 1 yen for bandage change. Backpack for 6 for
Stay,
1
Miss Daisy, stay. All right, let's try this one more time. All right, good girl. Okay. All right, this is taking forever. Okay, that part is secured, so we've got our stirrups ready. I've got a piece of tape on the lateral and medial aspect of the leg. So we're going to go ahead and start using our cast padding to go ahead and create our nice fluffy surface on the leg. I'm going to start at the distal end of the limb, and I'm going to make sure that I leave my toes out. We don't want to wrap our toes up in there, because if we do, we're going to hide any evidence of any swelling that we caused by, improperly putting the bandage on. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the roll gauze. Excuse me, the cast padding. And when I start, make sure my toes are sticking out. I want to make sure that when my spiral goes on, that my next spiral is going to come over 50% onto the last spiral. And we are okay with the tightness on this. As Dr. Jody said when I watched her instructional video, that it is virtually impossible to make this portion of your bandage too tight. So, and I'm going to pad this extra well because I'm using that metal splint. I don't want to cause any chafing. I'd much rather have a plastic one, but we did not have access. Alright, when I'm doing my roll gauze, my cotton cast padding, I'm going to go pretty high up into our axillary region to give some padding up there for when if our splint comes up that high. We've got to be careful and make sure we pad that. I'm probably going to put an extra layer on. I'm going to tear here. I'm going to restart with my second fresh roll to give her an extra layer of padding. Good girl. And I still got my toes sticking out, and I can see my stirrups. They're not as long as I'd like for them to be, but I do have those. Alright, so we're just following the spiral pattern and laying it down on 50% of my previous spiral. She's being a very good patient. Alright, I'm just going to give some extra cushion around this elbow and up into the axillary region. We don't make this too big. Alright, what a good girl. You can tear this or you can cut this when you need to detach a piece. Alright, sweet thing. Alright, so now time for us to go ahead and start using the roll gauze. We're going to follow the same pattern. Make sure my toes are out. And start this in the same fashion. I'm going to spiral over my cast padding and then lay that down onto the previous spiral about 50%. So I'm going to cover 50% of the previous spiral. She's being a very sweet girl. And this layer is kind of just to hold on all of the cast padding that we put on, so we don't have to be nearly as generous and cushy with this layer. I'm just going to give it the extra here. Alright, so that portion's ready. Nice and padded. I'm going to go ahead and detach my tongue depressors so I can move my stirrups onto the leg. That's going to keep my bandage from slipping down. It's okay, sweet girl. Alright, here we go. We're just going to twist these around and lay it up onto the leg. As I said, these are a little short, but this is my first bandage. My first Robert Jones bandage. Alright. And here's the part where if we wanted to, we could place this bandage without placing a splint. I would just cover it with vet wrap. But since we learned how to do it with the splint in our video, we're going to show you with the splint. So I'm going to get my splint ready. I'm going to get my vet wrap ready. And I've already pre-unrolled that so it's not tight. And I've got some waterproof tape to place on the end for the spot of the foot that's going to actually come down and strike the ground. We want to keep that from wearing out and wearing down the tip of the splint. This tape is not sticky at all. And I've placed an extra piece here since this tape is kind of shifting a little bit, since it's not very sticky. I'm going to place a small piece there to keep that in place. Alright, now with this splint for her, this is a little bit short for her leg. I think I'm limited on the options that I have. So this is obviously not a splint that I would want to keep on her. I would want to find something that's appropriate for her size, and it just barely comes to her elbow. We want it to come up a little bit further. So we would not leave this one on. It would not be proper to use. But I'm just going to wrap the leg for the intents purposes of the video. We would want a longer splint, but we are limited on our supplies here. Okay. So what I can probably do to equate for the size difference is put a lot more padding at the elbow for her to make up for that. I'm going to put some extra padding here. I don't want anything to dig into her leg. Sweet girl. I'm just going to cut this with bandage scissors. So, obviously the cupped part is going to go down where her foot is. We're going to go ahead and start with our vet wrap. And this is a roll that I previously loosened. You don't want to put a lot of pressure or tighten these down at any stage. I'm going to make sure that I have the metal portion covered on the bottom of the foot. Obviously, you want to leave her toes out. So, and we will be putting some extra tape on the bottom of the foot there, so we don't have that sticking out. Right, we're going to spiral. Make sure that your splint's lined up, and just follow the 50% lay pattern, making sure that I cover the previous spiral 50%. We're going nice and light with our vet wrap. We're not putting a lot of tension on it. Looks like I picked up the roll that wasn't unrolled all the way. There we go, sweet girl. She's being a very, very good girl. So, that's a good girl. Alright, what a good girl. What a good big girl. I'm going to leave a little bit of that sticking out like Dr. Jody said on the video, just in case you have a splint that comes up that high. You want to make sure that you've got some protection for the axillary region. And I'm going to actually put a little bit more vet wrap up here because it kind of looks a little bit thin. And I'm going to check the bottom to make sure the middle portion of my splint's not hanging out. So I'm just going to actually apply one more layer. Her toes are still out, for good measure. Again, I'm going to make sure that I keep it light. This bandage is almost finished. She's been a very good patient. Alright. There's the girl. I'm going to go ahead and get some tape and finish this by dating the splint. The bandage and the splint. Toes are out. I'm placing a piece up here to seal the last wrap that we actually put up here. And I'm going to write the date on here. Miss Daisy's date. So I'm going to write the date that it was applied, which is 3/25. And then I'm going to write my initials. And we're going to put one more piece of tape on the bottom just to shield the portion where the metal splint is closest to the top, you know, since we don't have a lot of padding there. And Dr. Jody did use some duct tape. I'm going to go ahead and use some waterproof tape and place that piece down here. And place another piece. And as she instructed, we usually do send a bag home with the owner if we're worried that it's going to get wet or anything. We would give them a bag just to use only when the animal goes out. Make sure to instruct them to keep the bandage clean and dry, and monitoring for any limping or discomfort. Do let them know that because they can't see the toes, they need to make sure that they don't see any evidence of swelling or let their pet lick the bandage. And that concludes the placement of the Robert Jones bandage. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and remove Daisy's Robert Jones bandage. You can unravel these just by hand by taking off each layer, or you can simply use bandage scissors to cut. I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually go ahead and come up behind her and cut with this scissors. If she had any wounds, I would want to be mindful not to go anywhere near any wounds with scissors. So you've got to get a knowledge of the patient before you take a bandage off. I'm going to go ahead and slip the bandage scissors under the bandage. I'm going to be feeling for the layers and feeling for her leg. You can be even safer and take it off layer by layer, which might be the case with her because I made it so thick. Might be better to do it that way. To just use scissors and go little by little, safely, when you have something so thick that you're cutting through. Back up here. Not only did I watch the video with Dr. Jody, I did utilize my McKiernan's text to gain knowledge on bandaging before we put this on Daisy's leg today. So we're just taking it off little by little with our bandage scissors. Being a very good girl, this is a very thick bandage. Very sweet girl. Alright, you gotta be careful when you get to their toes. And be careful if you have a splint in the leg that you don't run into the splint and everything. Alright, sweet girl. And it's usually at some point you can actually just slip their leg out. But you gotta be careful, especially if an animal has a broken toe or something, not to slip it out too soon. But that concludes removal of the Robert Jones bandage.